Topic number 1. A recent news article, or a news article from a week and a half ago, stated that a school in the U.S. state of Georgia reinstituted corporal punishment as a form of disciplinary action towards students. The article also mentions that there are 19 other states that have paddling as a legal form of punishment for students, though it has not been utilized in years. What effect do you think it would have on violence in schools if this form of discipline was reenacted? Yeah.
So what do we think of corporal punishment? Most of us of a certain age will remember it was quite common in schools. In Scotland, they hit you with a leather belt. And in England, they hit you with a cane. So it was quite common there. It only disappeared relatively recently. And now in most of the yeah, basically, you broke the rules, they hit you to prevent you doing it again. I mean,
I don't think you worked that very well, huh?
Not for me, but most people are not me. But I suppose the thing about it is, though, if you don't have any self-discipline in life, it's a nightmare. You're just going from one chaos to another and have no self-control. Unfortunately, the only way to have self-discipline is to know what discipline is. You don't have to beat people to death, but you have to teach them the line. For example, I seen someone the other day trying to negotiate with a 3-year-old not to put his fingers in the socket. And you thought, what are you doing? If you say to him, don't do that, you will be cut, or you won't get a treat next month or something crazy like that. I mean, the kids, they're going to do stuff, and then, they don't get stopped from doing it. Then either you slap them on the line and say, don't do that again, which upsets them. So that's preferable to them touching a live socket and being
and dying, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a fine line, I think, but you've got to think that you can't eliminate all forms of discipline, otherwise you'll not be able to control people, and you end up with the cases where we're getting now reported in British schools, where almost 85% of teaching staff have been personally assaulted by students. That's just ridiculous.
Well,
so it's a difficult one.
If I may say something, I think there's I don't think we shouldn't discipline children because children need to learn certain stuff, such as not to put their fingers in the socket.
Yeah.
But I think that beating children, the corporal punishment, is not the way to go.
What would you suggest as an alternative thing? I mean, nobody would take it as a first option. It's not a preferable option, but people do it because they don't have any other options to use. I mean, you got to remember when the teacher's got a class of say 20 or 30 kids, and one of them or two of them are massively disruptive. What are they going to do? And also some people come from environments where they live in rough environments. They don't negotiation or telling people to do stuff doesn't work. So the thing is, it's not so much you like the idea, it's just that what alternatives do you have? These schools have obviously instituted these measures again because they were having discipline problems. If they had other effective methods of doing it, then they wouldn't select it. But it's clearly not that. I mean, the idea it comes from this false idea that somehow children are all born innocent and everything gone. We all know that's not the case. Children are closer to animals, really. They act on instinct and on impulse. They haven't learned yet to discipline themselves. So, you need to teach people how to control themselves. Unfortunately, that's it. Plus, kids that have never had any kind of physical corporal punishment don't know what it feels like to be hit. So they start to hit each other because they don't realise what it's like. So
I don't think that's true.
It is true. It happens a lot. I don't know about your school, but I mean, a lot of kids, when we've got these kids, we've got problems in Britain now where people are being killed over ridiculous things because young men are throwing full-fledged punches at people. Like a shopkeeper was recently killed because he wouldn't give this kid cigarette papers. This kid threw a punch behind a 16-year-old, everything he had, hit the man in the chest, it stopped his heart, and he fell on the floor and died. Because they don't have any concept of how violence works. And they're ruining, kids are stabbing each other and stuff when they get older. Because they're basically having tantrums. Someone has a tantrum at 4, it's a pain. Someone has a tantrum at 24, someone gets killed. So the lack of instilled understanding of violence and pain and what it does is a secondary issue we're seeing that we didn't have when I was growing up, because people knew what it was like. If you hit someone, it hurts. It's not a movie. It hurts you and it hurts them, but what it feels like, or what it feels like for someone else when you do it.
That's an interesting perspective. I never really thought about that as being something that could be an effect.
Because it's like everyone says something like common sense has died out, but it's probably because there's no such thing as common sense. People have to learn
Something's
everything.
changed it, yeah.
Yeah, people have to learn everything. What we regarded as something common sense was just something you say you wouldn't do that because of common sense. But common sense is still something that hasn't to be learned. It's not some innate instinct humans have. So if you don't teach people what violence is, then they don't know. They just see it in games, movies, and don't realise that it's not a movie. If you punch someone and you're a reasonably fit person and you hit them with sufficient force and they're not expecting it, you can do life-changing damage to them. It's not like we see so many movies where people just punch people. The number of times you see every movie you watch. When there was one scene I was watching Harry Potter of all things in the Chamber of Secrets, and there's one bit where Gilroy's lost his memory and he's looking at Harry, and Ron whacks him on the head with a stone and knocks him unconscious, and there's no damage at all. I mean, when most people, when you
Yeah, he
are
probably would have
knocked,
gotten a
he would have
concussion.
killed him, yeah. And if someone does get knocked out, when you're waking up, they generally got some concussion. They're generally confused. They almost always throw up because it's quite a shock. It's not, people do not recover from unconsciousness without any side effects. But everything we see on TV seems to suggest they do. And if that's your only exposure to any kind of violence, then you believe that's real. If I hit someone, who's the last time somebody hit you with a rock? You've got no idea what the danger is, what you're doing, because you've never felt anybody hit you. So you don't have to beat kids with a stick in Tom Brown's school days, but giving a kid a slap in the leg or something to stop doing something is not the end of the world. And I've seen one woman trying to negotiate with a 5-year-old. If you don't do this, you won't get a treat next week. Next week's like a lifetime to a 5-year-old. I don't care about that. So it comes down to the point, like I said, the difficulty is, what do you do instead? How do you instill these values without taking that action? I mean, you have to have legislation to prevent it. You don't want a case where we had in the past where kids have basically been abused by people in authority misusing their authority. But at the same time, you can't just bury your head in the sand and think if you instill no discipline into a child, they'll grow up to be some perfectly balanced adult. It's just, unfortunately, just not how it works.
The path I was going down with this as well is if you add corporal punishment into school, how would that affect, let's say, bullying? Let's say with people going to schools and shootings and stuff like that.
Exactly.
If you've got, what I'm trying to say is, if you've got, let's say, resentment towards bullies, which maybe some of these people are, and that's where they're shooting up a school or whatever, and then you've got teachers hitting them.
Oh, that could be bad.
Creating resentment towards the teacher. Now you got resentment towards the teacher and towards the bullies, and let's say the bullies somehow get this kid in trouble and make it look like he's done something, and now the teacher's hitting him for doing something that the bully actually sidelined into that situation. Now you've got things coming from two different directions, and now you're creating more of an issue.
Yeah, but isn't the issue is that what you're seeing when you're seeing these shootings is a disproportionate response. That's another effect of what I'm talking about. You've got
Do you think
someone
that's the
who's
same
got,
cause?
yeah, well think of it this way. You've got someone who's never been hit, never been struck, never been disciplined properly, and basically been given everything through negotiation or a treat or like a carrot, if you like. All of a sudden they get to high school and the girls aren't nice to them and the boys don't like them very much. They've never ever had to deal with this negative input before. So they lash out, which is basically like a child. They lash out like a child, except they are 17-year-old adults who have got 6 guns in the loft. So they lash out by emptying a clip into someone. What they see as a response reaction is disproportionate because they've never been taught proportionate responses. If someone does something like sticks a fig in a socket, you slap them quite hard. That's very dangerous. Don't do it again. If someone maybe takes a toy off another kid, you might take the toy off them and say, that's not a good thing. It's not yours. And then they learn that each action has a consequence and your response has to be proportional to that event. I mean, half of these kids, when they actually catch them, the ones that don't kill themselves, when it comes right down to it, they did it because somebody did something they didn't like, and their only reaction was to go extreme because their whole self-image shattered because they'd never been treated that way. So in order to get their own self-respect back, they had to completely obliterate not just the event, but the entire situation. So they go in there and start shooting pupils and teachers. Because the reason I think that is when you see these out when they get a hand, the gun people normally start by shooting 1 or 2 people they have a specific grievance against. And once they've started down that road, they then start shooting other people, random people, and eventually shoot themselves. All of that is a disproportionate response to what happened to them. Because, as I said, they were never taught proportional responses. Everyone assumes, or they did assume until recently, that these things were innate. But now we know from recent events like school shootings, they aren't. They aren't innate. People aren't born knowing a disproportionate response. They learn it somehow. And if they don't, for whatever reason, then you end up with these extreme reactions. When you're talking about kids, some of them are 17, 18, they're not children, but they've got a very infantile view of the world. They're regressed. They're thinking like they are children. I mean, they're thinking, this is it, my life's been, I'm 18, these girls, everyone treated me terribly, I'll go shoot them. I mean, that is a very disproportionate, and it also shows they've got no sense of perspective. They can't understand that these events are tribulations along the road, because up until that point, they've never encountered it any before. I mean, one of the interesting things in Columbine, one of the first of these events, was that a lot of people assumed initially one of the kids coming out was responsible because his father was a drunk and had killed himself and almost beat his mum. And what was actually happening was this kid was running back and forward into the building to save people's lives. And the 2 kids doing the shooting were in fact upper middle class children who'd been given pretty much everything. So that was the first assumption. It's just some poor kids rebelling against the system and shooting people. That turned out to be nonsense. Most of these people have got well, for one thing, they can afford rather expensive ordnance. Even if it's on the web, you know, you might be able to get guns in the States pretty easy, but they don't give them to you for a $5. So that's what I think as well. Kids who have no discipline have no proportional response was correctly set, and that's why they were. Now, there's obviously more to it than that, because not everybody in school is shooting everybody, despite what the press may say. It's still a very rare event, but enough of it is happening for it to be statistically significant that there is a common factor. And I think they've got other issues, but one of the primary problems is they haven't been taught proportional responses because they've got no self-discipline. They got no self-discipline because they've never been taught discipline.
Do you think there's a way to teach discipline without using
Well,
corporal punishment?
this is the key to it. This has always been the thing. So if we take the element again, instead of banning it all the time and hoping for the best, if we do realise that this works, then we do have to look at other ways. There's a school that was opened here in the UK that took kids that were excluded from other schools, that were basically thrown out, and made a school just for these troubled kids and gave them extra attention, extra stuff, explained to them, and they did do a lot of work, and they did turn them around. They were taking exams, they were getting something. They dealt with their issues, basically, that was causing them to do that. But that took focus and understanding, and also took saying to them, you have to have boundaries. So if you steal, we won't take you back. It's just that simple. So you've got to decide why you're stealing and what. We're just telling you, you're forgiven up until then, it's all forgotten. Clean slate, no history, no one in the school will know anything about what you did. Clean slate, we'll give you everything you need, but you've got to decide what you want, and this is your future. They would take them to prisons and show them prisons and get them to teach, what happens when people get into fights, and basically show them what their option was. Because a lot of these kids felt that people had given up on them already. So they've been led to believe that they'd started down a path and there was no way to change it. Whereas these people took them into a school. So there are ways they can do it, but it takes focus that often teachers don't have time. If you've got 30 kids and 2 of them are disruptive, you've got 28 other kids to teach that want to be there, and you can't focus all your energies on the 2 that are a problem. So the only weapon they're currently using, where they don't have corporal punishment, is they exclude them from school, which means they fall further behind and their social problems increase. So we do have to look at options, but we have to be serious that in the meantime, we can't stop disciplining and just let them run riot while we work out what to do, because we're building a secondary problem of kids that are just, they're uncontrollable because the teacher, the proposed authority figure, has nothing she can use as a weapon to control them. So they just ignore her if they want to. Of course, they're kids, so they might be a phase they're going through, but by the time they get to 16, 17, it may be too late. They've thrown away too much and nobody's willing to give them a time of day. So it is a complex one, but that's what they've got to do. You can't just say we don't want corporal punishment, which is what's happened up until now. Everybody's banned it and felt really good about themselves. Meanwhile, the problems have decreased because they haven't given teaching staff anything to work with. I mean, they've stopped things like they won't even give kids lines now. They're not letting them do anything they think will be harmful to their well-being. And then they're letting them go into a world which couldn't care less about their well-being. And they're just not equipped for it.
Who else? Anybody else?
Yeah, I don't know, I'm just thinking that it's not supposed to be the work of a teacher to discipline people, it's supposed to be the work of the parents. So I'm always a bit skeptical and suspicious about corporal punishment at school, because it's not supposed to be work teacher, but just like Ross, you said, it's one of the only weapons they have. But I don't know. And I'm also afraid that just by using corporal punishment, you discipline people by fear rather than respect or inspiration. And if you don't have fear anymore, well, they'll do it again. So I don't have any answer, of course, a solution, but yeah.
Yeah, it is true. It has to be used very sparingly. Otherwise, it's like a blitz effect. People just become inured to it. They start to see it as just something to get through, and it doesn't change their behavior. And true, parents, I mean, this has been a secondary debate we've had here which links into this. Where does the responsibility lie? I mean, they've had some cases in our schools where girls have been disciplined and parents have turned up threatening the teacher with physical violence because of what they said to their child. They said, why didn't you let the kid pass? Because she they failed the test. Why? Didn't study for it. She's only one in the class who failed. Why was that? Because she's the one who didn't study. Well, I think you would definitely you must be some. You've got parents with no discipline, let alone children. They're turning up at the school causing trouble and undermining the teacher. Because you can't dare do that to my kid, which you said is a strange thing, but again, I think it's all linked to the same phenomenon. They teach the parents themselves have kind of using their kids as a kind of almost like a subterfuge. They don't know about the proportional response that's happening to them. I mean, if a kid gets sent home because they've done something in school, the way it used to be was, like, if we got sent home from school, we did it. First, like, I got sent home once because some cop whacked me on the head for doing something. So my dad whacked me on the head as well and said, don't do it again.
Yeah.
You know, there was a kind of
True.
unity of authority there. Whereas now, you've got teachers getting challenged by parents who don't, so why are you doing that? I don't want my kid doing this. I don't want my kid doing that. And that needs, as a thing of society, it's the same similar thing. We don't have respect for authority figures anymore because they're lessened in their ability to do anything else. So if you start off growing up and you don't respect teachers, then you won't respect other authority. You won't respect cops. You won't respect any other authority figure because you've never had any reason to. And once you start down that road, you know, I mean, it is, I'm not proposing we bring back like the old days of corporal punishment where kids were just beaten with sticks and whacked with leather belts and any of that nonsense. But we have to instill some kind of balance. You're right, fear in itself is highly a good idea. But it was only used in extreme cases, and it was used after multiple warnings. Like, if you did something wrong, you were told it was wrong, and you got a warning. You did it again, you were told it was wrong. It was only on the third strike that they actually took action.
Mm-hmm.
So you got most kids didn't get as far as getting the violence, but some did. And so there was a kind of learning curve. So, and then ideally you wouldn't have to use it much at all, like a deterrent. But without any deterrent, what are you going to do? You know, kids are people too. They're going to be subject to their own stuff going on in their own lives, and that's what they're going to focus on. And if their teacher can offer them no kind of control mechanisms, they'll just ignore them. Like you said, bullying's an interesting one. Bullying's a phenomenal problem all over the place now. And every time I see the stuff about it, I always think it's back to front. Make sure online, tell your kid this, tell your kid that, yada, yada, yada. Why don't we spend all the time finding out who the bullies are and why they're doing it? That's the problem. The problem is some kids are dealing with their issues by transferring them to someone else. And the level of aggression in this can become quite intense. Kids have committed suicide over it. Again, disproportional response. So I think there is a balance to be struck, but we have to instill some kind of authority figure, authority event. How we do that, I don't know. The idea is we want more answers, but the fact none of us have any, but we do need to do things. And obviously this particular state, that they're looking at this because they're trying to find alternatives and they can't find it. And the other states that have it on the books are starting to turn back to it because of the level of violence, the extreme violence we're seeing all over the place, gang trouble, school shootings. You know, it all seems to be linked together. You can't eliminate it by doing that, but if you teach one person the effect of violence and self-control, you may save a life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Two, probably. Because the kid who does the violence, even the young, kills somebody in a stupid fight when they're 16, that's their life ruined as well. They've got to carry that event for whole life, plus they're in the prison system, and that's their road down there. It's a tricky one, and everyone's initial reaction, including mine, is to say, no, we don't want that, let's never have that, it's uncivilized, it's ridiculous, we have to find a better way. But we have to find a better way first. We can't find a better way afterwards, because we've been trying to do that, and it doesn't seem to be working.
And what about, I don't know, discipline class? Like you teach people when they're young about what's wrong, what's right.
I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could do it as a course. Even something like, I always thought something like martial arts would be a good thing. Teach people, not just martial art, the training to fight, but why people train not to fight. Teach them relative values. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of classes, I think it should be life classes, like how to balance a checkbook,
Yeah.
to get a loan, what legal things, all this stuff should be done. how to meditate, how to do stress relief programs when you're in primary school, when you're in first grade type stuff, so that your whole school life has these positive things in it as well. For example, when you're in your 18th, your last few years, they could teach you what a mortgage is and how you get one. You know, so that life skills are part of it. That's certainly a good route to go down, because they don't really teach you that in school much. You don't get taught life skills, you know. Like I said, these are things that used to be the domain of the parents, but we're seeing some failures there, aren't we? We're seeing a lot of parents that don't have these skills, so therefore they can't pass them on. So do we have anybody who disagrees?
Yeah.
You know, who fundamentally disagrees and says we should never hit anybody under any circumstances?
Joe?
Yeah, I'm alive.
No.
Don't worry.
Uh,
I've been a little bit busy doing some chores, so
you've been
I'm listening on.
up. Mm.
Yeah, I have a lot of stuff to do today, so
I think it.
feels bad, man.
We could say that, taking the devil advocate's point of view, we could simply say, if you return to using violence, even in a controlled manner, you're still falling back on violence. You're falling back, like you said, fear and aggression as a way of dealing with issues.
Well,
And
this also sounds way too much like you're trying to go and make a drill sergeant out of like a fourth grade teacher, which won't end well.
Which doesn't end well. So maybe, and also in the broader view, we're not teaching new ways. We're kind of giving up. We're trying to say, oh, there's no way to do this. We just have to go back to shot callers. So there could be a way that we could say that, okay, we've got the issue now. We have to find a way of dealing with it. And like you said, I think life classes offers a good thing. Why don't we teach kids from a very early age about the world honestly? You know, not hide it behind religion or sociology or an idea of innocence, but straight up front from when they're young kids. If you do this, this is what happens. People do. If you thump somebody with your hobby horse, you can do them a lot of damage. You know, and just do things like, maybe we don't have to hit the kid. Maybe we could show them by hitting something else. So say you've got a bit of wood and there's the element, and you thump two bits of wood together till one's damaged. You see, that is what force does when it's applied to something else. So when you throw something at someone, that is what it feels like when it hits them. Then they get an idea of the effect of something without necessarily resorting to using violence and fear on them. So it's a safe way to show them the effect of violence. Because kids are people are smart. Most people are smartest things on the planet. We will pick up concepts if they're explained to us in the right way. And we'll take that on board. And the kids will understand the need of the violence without necessarily having to hit them. We can show them the effects of stuff. That in itself requires some changes, because at the moment we protect kids from absolutely everything. We used to think, like you guys do it now, we've got horse chestnuts, we call them conkers. They fell out the trees this time of year. We used to take them home, bake them, put them, whatever we tried to do to make them harder. So we could tie a bit of string to them, we whacked the two of them together, and the one that shattered lost, and the one that didn't won. They banned that from schools because of potential injury. Two nuts cracking together was regarded as too dangerous. So they just stopped it. Yeah, literally, that was how they played it. Which didn't get there. You can that made everybody roar with laughter. But the point was that meant that there's another way of shielding them from reality. Whereas the opposite is true. Playing conkers is a good way for kids to realise you thump two things together, something breaks. So we need some method of teaching things responsibly. And also, in greater things, then you go to abstracts as the kids get older. Verbal things. You can hurt people with words. Once you realise people can be hurt by things, you can then take the kids on to the thing that people can also be hurt by words. And when you're bullying someone, do you think it's funny? The damage you can do to these people is extreme. And we've seen it in extreme cases. People are social animals, no matter what they say. They have to adapt. We're social. And if you're ostracized from a peer group, it's an extremely powerful thing. It's something that does have an effect on people. And other kids need to know that kind of damage as well and teach them that, that's it. And the key to that has always been the bully, not the victim. What is the bully's motivation for doing this? It's not a simple thing because kids' cultures are much more complicated than we used to think they are. There's a lot of peer pressure and being the top dog and all this primitive stuff, which is still rattling around in human beings. And the kids are just manifesting that.
Yeah, it's the combination of a meritocracy and a full-blown kleptocracy at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, and these things are extremely powerful. And even if you're a smart kid and you know all this stuff, it doesn't change how you feel about it when people bully you. That's why it seems ridiculous that people do stuff. Well, they almost stopped some really attractive young 15-year-old girl trying to throw herself in front of a train because she fell out with this group of girls and they kept telling her she was ugly and she'd never get a boyfriend. And at 15, she took this to heart and was going to kill herself. It sounds ridiculous now, but if you've ever been bullied, you'll understand that you can understand the pressure people had. Me, I was always for killing the bullies, but that wasn't popular either.
It's like my favorite Stalin quote. How to make everyone in your country happy? Kill everyone who's unhappy. Simple.
You can't deny the purity of the logic. You can see the drawbacks as a selling point.
Yeah.
So that was basically it. Yeah. But we can do it, but it does take a shift, and you can't win everything. I think that's the trouble as well. We have to lose something. We would have to expose kids to some unpleasant truths, perhaps earlier than we would like, to avoid using more extreme methods to achieve the same result. There isn't any way I can see that you can do it all and get away with it. You can't shield them from everything, not hit them, and still expect them to grow up to be people who understand the complexities. Because bullying is a key to this. They've been trying to eliminate bullying since time immemorial, and they've never really succeeded doing that. As Joe alluded to, the hierarchical nature of schools doesn't help. The competition, exam board. Maybe it's just exams, we just pass them, or you don't, then you retake them. Maybe all this grade stuff just builds for, we have a very hierarchical view, and hierarchies encourage people to want to move up them. And if they can't move up them through conventional means, achieving the results, they'll move up them using violence and intimidation. And that, bribery and criminal activity in order to get up there. So that the hierarchical structure of it could maybe be leveled at.
All right. Anyone else? Anything else?
I really have nothing to add. I'm going to be honest here.